A cold, sterile silence hung over the alien outpost, broken only by the soft hum of machinery. Commander Zarn paced through the narrow corridors, his mind restless. The outpost was a fortress, a testament to the Thalnak Empire's might, yet something felt wrong. His instincts, honed over decades of warfare, whispered that danger was near. "Commander, Sector 7 is clear," reported a young soldier, his voice trembling despite his attempts to sound confident. Zarn nodded, dismissing the soldier with a wave. They had been receiving faint signals from an unidentified source for days, but nothing tangible had surfaced. Paranoia gnawed at the edges of his mind, fueled by the stories of the human sniper, a ghost, they called him, who could strike from miles away and vanish without a trace. The very thought unsettled him, though he would never admit it. Just as Zarn was about to turn toward the command center, a piercing crack echoed through the corridor. The sound was unmistakable, a gunshot. His heart froze, then raced as the realization struck him. "Find cover!" Zarn barked, drawing his weapon. His command echoed through the halls as soldiers scrambled, their movements panicked. The outpost, once a beacon of security, now felt like a tomb. Zarn crouched behind a metal column, his mind racing. The sniper was here, inside the perimeter. How? He had prepared for everything, yet the humans had a way of defying expectations, breaking rules that the Thalnak adhered to with religious fervor. He had to stay calm, think clearly. "Report!" Zarn demanded into his communicator, his voice sharp. "Sector 4. Officer Threx is down, Commander," came the reply, laden with fear. "Single shot, clean. We can't locate the sniper." Zarn cursed under his breath. Threx had been one of his best officers. The precision of the shot confirmed it. This was no ordinary attack. The human sniper was targeting them, one by one. "Seal the exits. No one enters or leaves without my direct order," Zarn ordered. He needed to contain this threat before it spread, before his soldiers' fear turned into chaos. Zarn's mind raced as he formulated a plan. He had studied human tactics, knew their penchant for unpredictability, but this was methodical, cold, calculated. The sniper wasn't just killing, he was sending a message. A warning, perhaps, or a declaration of intent. Either way, Zarn couldn't afford to underestimate his opponent. He took a deep breath, forcing his heartbeat to steady. The outpost corridors were a labyrinth, but that worked both ways. If the sniper was inside, he could be cornered, trapped. Zarn just had to flush him out, force him into the open. "Prepare the drones," Zarn ordered. "Sweep every corridor. We find him, we end this." As the soldiers moved to carry out his commands, Zarn felt the weight of his decision. He was pitting his forces against an unseen enemy, a ghost who had already proven deadly. But he had no choice. Failure was not an option. The silence returned, heavier this time, filled with the unspoken fear of what was to come. Zarn's grip tightened on his weapon. The hunt had begun, and this time, the predator was about to become the prey. The air inside the outpost was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. Zarn stood in the command center, his eyes fixed on the monitor that displayed live feeds from the security drones. The sleek, insect-like machines hovered through the corridors, their scanners sweeping for any trace of the intruder. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the occasional crackle of static. "This human is no ordinary sniper," Zarn muttered, more to himself than to the officers beside him. He clenched his fists, frustration gnawing at him. Despite his precautions, the sniper had penetrated the outpost's defenses with terrifying ease. Every second that passed without a visual confirmation of the enemy was a failure that Zarn couldn't afford. "Commander, we've locked down all exits," reported Lieutenant Rull, his voice tinged with anxiety. "But the drones, they're not picking up anything. It's like he's invisible? A ghost?" Zarn interrupted, his tone sharp. "Yes, I've heard the stories. But ghosts don't kill. Flesh and blood do. And this sniper bleeds, just like any of us." Rull nodded, though doubt flickered in his eyes. Zarn could see the fear spreading among his troops, a fear that threatened to break them. He had to act swiftly, decisively. If he didn't, the human would pick them apart one by one until nothing remained but shattered pride. "Commander, perhaps we should consider," Ro began, but Zarn cut him off with a raised hand. "No. I won't let this assassin dictate our actions. We have the advantage here: numbers, firepower, technology. We'll draw him out." Zarn's mind raced, formulating a plan. The sniper was a master of stealth, but stealth required patience, and patience could be exploited. He needed to create a scenario that would force the human to reveal himself, to make a mistake. "Send a squad to Sector 5, Zarn ordered. "But make sure they're noisy. I want the sniper to think they're a high-value target." Rull hesitated. "But sir, that will—" "Do it," Zarn snapped. "This is a war of attrition, Lieutenant. We need to bait him into making the first move." As the squad moved into position, Zarn watched the monitors with hawk-like intensity. The soldiers, following his orders, made no effort to conceal their presence. They marched with heavy footsteps, their weapons clanking, their voices loud and deliberate. It was a ruse, but one that Zarn hoped would be convincing. Minutes dragged by, each one more excruciating than the last. The drones hovered close, their scanners on high alert. Zarn's heart pounded in his chest, his eyes unblinking as he waited for any sign of the sniper. Then, a sharp ping, a single blip on the monitor, just a flicker, but enough. Zarn's lips curled into a grim smile. "There you are," he whispered. Before he could give the order, the screen flashed, and the feed cut to black. Static filled the air as every drone went offline simultaneously. "What happened?" Rull's voice was panicked now, but Zarn didn't need an explanation. The human had anticipated his trap, and sprung one of his own. The outpost plunged into darkness as the lights flickered and died, leaving Zarn and his men alone in the black void the hunter now hunted. Darkness swallowed the outpost, leaving Zarn and his men disoriented. The hum of power had vanished, replaced by an eerie silence that felt like the calm before a storm. Zarn's pulse quickened, his senses heightened as he strained to listen for any sound, any clue to the sniper's location. "Stay calm," Zarn commanded, his voice cutting through the blackness. "Activate night vision. We're not blind in the dark." His visor flickered to life, bathing the corridor in shades of green. The alien architecture, once imposing, now felt claustrophobic, the walls pressing in as if the outpost itself were conspiring against them. Zarn's gaze swept the area, searching for any sign of movement, any hint of the enemy lurking in the shadows. "This isn't right, Commander." Lieutenant Rull's voice was barely a whisper, but Zarn could hear the fear beneath it. "He's playing with us." Zarn clenched his jaw. He knew Rull was right. The human sniper wasn't just a soldier. He was a predator, toying with his prey. The power outage, the disabled drones, it was all part of a larger plan, a strategy designed to sow confusion and fear. But Zarn refused to be a victim. He would not let this human outsmart him. "Rull, take your squad and secure the armory," Zarn ordered, keeping his tone firm. "We need to regroup and prepare for a counterattack." "But sir," Rull began, his hesitation evident. "Now, Lieutenant!" Zarn barked, silencing any further protest. He watched as Rull and his men moved cautiously down the corridor, their weapons at the ready. Zarn remained still, listening to their footsteps fade into the distance. The moment they disappeared from sight, Zarn's instincts flared. A slight shift in the air, a barely perceptible movement, something was wrong. He spun around just in time to see a flash of light, followed by the sharp crack of a gunshot. The bullet whizzed past his head, embedding itself in the wall behind him. Zarn dove for cover, rolling behind a support beam as another shot rang out, narrowly missing his shoulder. His heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline surging through his veins. The sniper had anticipated his orders, had lured Rull away to isolate him. Zarn cursed under his breath. This human was more than just skilled, he was relentless. Zarn peered around the corner, his eyes scanning the corridor for any sign of the sniper. He saw nothing, only the same empty hallways stretching into the darkness. But he knew the human was there, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A plan began to form in Zarn's mind. The sniper was hunting him, but every hunter had a weakness. If he could turn the tables, if he could draw the sniper out into the open, he might stand a chance. Zarn took a deep breath, steeling himself. He would have to act fast, and there would be no room for error. But if he succeeded, the hunter would become the hunted. Zarn stepped into the corridor, his weapon raised, ready for the final confrontation. Zarn moved cautiously through the dim corridor, his pulse steady but his mind racing. The outpost's oppressive silence pressed down on him, amplifying every creak of metal and hiss of steam. The sniper was near, Zarn could feel it, like the brush of a shadow just beyond his sight. His fingers tightened around his weapon, ready to fire at the first sign of movement. He advanced, each step calculated, his senses honed. The sniper had the advantage, but Zarn had one thing the human didn't expect: resolve. Zarn wasn't just a commander protecting his outpost. He was a warrior defending his people, and he would not fall prey to this assassin. A soft sound, a breath, perhaps, echoed from the next corridor. Zarn halted, listening intently. The noise was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. The sniper was close, too close. Zarn's heart pounded, his thoughts sharpening into a single, focused directive: end this. He crept forward, the darkness closing in like a living entity. His eyes caught a flicker of movement at the far end of the corridor. It was brief, just a glint of light reflecting off metal, but it was enough to confirm the sniper's location. The human was poised, waiting for Zarn to make a mistake. Zarn slowed his breathing, every instinct urging him to be patient. He couldn't afford to rush this, couldn't afford to give the human even the slightest opening. The sniper was the best of his kind, but Zarn knew his outpost better than anyone. He knew its strengths, its weaknesses, and how to turn its confines into his advantage. In a fluid motion, Zarn tossed a small device down the corridor. It clattered against the floor, emitting a brief spark of light before skidding to a stop. The sound was minimal, but in the silence, it was deafening. The sniper's instincts would tell him to move, to shift positions, and in that instant Zarn would strike. Zarn's plan hinged on one moment, a single shot, perfectly timed. He crouched low, eyes trained on the far end of the corridor, his breath held. Seconds stretched into eternity, the tension unbearable. Then, the sound he'd been waiting for, a soft rustle, a barely audible step as the sniper repositioned. Zarn moved with lightning speed, raising his weapon and firing in one fluid motion. The shot rang out, the sound echoing through the corridor. For a heartbeat, there was silence, then a thud as the sniper hit the ground. Zarn exhaled slowly, his gaze fixed on the fallen figure. The human lay still, the fight finally over. Zarn approached cautiously, his weapon still trained on the sniper, but it was clear, the battle was won. The outpost was safe, and his people were secure. As Zarn stood over the human, he felt a strange mix of respect and relief. This sniper had been a formidable opponent, pushing Zarn to his limits. But in the end, it was Zarn's resolve, his unwavering determination, that had prevailed. He signaled to his men, the lights of the outpost flickering back on as the power was restored. The corridors flooded with light, revealing the aftermath of the struggle. Zarn took a deep breath, allowing himself a moment of reprieve. "Secure the area," Zarn ordered, his voice steady. "And prepare to send a message back to command. Let them know the human threat has been neutralized." As his men moved to carry out his orders, Zarn couldn't help but glance back at the sniper one last time. The human had been a worthy adversary, but this was their world, their fight, and Zarn had won. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the darkness behind.